This week, we talk about the Battlefield 2042 open beta, my thoughts on the new Ghost Recon, not BR, but kind of BR, the fallout of the Twitch leaks now and in the future, and much, much more. Let's do it. Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 156, My Breaking Point. I am Morgan, aka Bond Diesel, and this is a podcast about gaming, tech, and whatever else I feel like ranting about. Please take a moment to subscribe to and rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. Comments, likes, and subs on YouTube, retweets on Twitter, and especially iTunes reviews help the most. Also, be sure to let me know if you have any questions or topics for the next show by replying to my tweets on Twitter in the YouTube comments or by going over and checking out Patreon. Thank you to our Patreon supporters for this month: PK, Uber Timmy, Hassan, Darren, Christian, Man-Made Golf, and Dale. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, check out patreon.com/BondDiesel. This podcast is brought to you by Manscaped and their new Lawnmower 4.0 razor, and you can use the code BAUN, BAUN, to get 20% off and free shipping internationally. More about this in an ad later in the show. Okay, jumping right into gaming news. My first bit here will be about Battlefield 2042 and its open beta and my impressions of it. So my experience so far with the open beta has involved me playing. I played their tech test a few weeks ago or a couple months ago on my Series X, which I can't talk about because that's NDA'd. Other than that. And then my experience this time has actually been during this open beta. I played it on Series X and then PC and then Series X. And surprisingly to me, my newly upgraded PC, which is, I'm fairly certain, beefier than my Xbox still, even though it's pretty good, has not ran the game well. I have a Ryzen 7 3700X, a 32 gigs of 36 megahertz, 3600 megahertz RAM, and a 2080 Super. And it's like run it okay. It's really weird. The CPU utilization is only like 40%, which isn't like super weird. But the GPU utilization is like 5 to 10%. So there's something weird going on with it. I don't know. Hopefully they get it fixed up. But my experience on the Series X has been great. Obviously you lose out a little bit on some of the aiming sensitivity and stuff like that from using a controller instead of the mouse and keyboard. But it's actually felt pretty intuitive. If you've read anything or seen any reporting on 2042, there's a lot of complaints about the UI and just the glitchiness of the open beta. Those are things that this is supposed to be a couple month old build. Supposedly the UI has been revamped since this build. And you would hope and assume most of those bugs would be figured out. So I won't, kind of cover that much. It does exist, but I haven't noticed it to be like a huge issue. When it comes to actually the game, Battlefield's weird, and it's kind of convenient that we just played Halo for a couple weekends, because I think Halo is a multiplayer game, and really most games, even Call of Duty and stuff, that they have like a unique flow and a unique rhythm to the way they play, right? So it can be jarring if you haven't played it for a while, or if you've never played it before. Any of those games to jump in, especially if you're playing with or against people who have played those games a lot or recently. And Battlefield definitely fits that bill. And I watched some other streamers who obviously aren't like big Battlefield fans, jump in and play, and like just be overwhelmed because there's capture points everywhere, there's things flying, there's people everywhere. There's not, especially early in the game, there's not like defined like front lines of combat and stuff. Um, and so at first it just looks like disorganized chaos. And then I think there's two things that happens. For you, the player yourself, you start to get into the flow. You start to understand, oh, I need to do this, and if I go here, this is a high traffic area, and if I follow other people or fight with other people, I'll live more often and get more kills. And what I think happens is it's two things that happens with you. You start to learn how the game plays better, and this has been with every Battlefield. Um, and then everyone else is too, even veterans. You still have to get into the flow. And what I've noticed already is that the first day of the open beta was like just a crazy shit show. Things were just happening everywhere. It was wild. And what I've noticed in the last like couple days, and especially last night, is people are starting to figure it out. They're starting to kind of understand how it works. And so you start to see, it's kind of funny how, when the open beta first came out, you would see just random capture points getting captured all over, and the map would just be a mess. And at least for me, my personal example is I've really noticed that you're starting to notice like the top half of the map will be controlled by one team and the bottom half by the other, and you start seeing that like trading, where teams start focusing on one and they start kind of, but there starts to be somewhat of a defined like front line, and that makes the game way more playable. And so overall, like I really like it. The specializations I was a little worried about. There's only 4 right now. There's let's see, there's one that has a grappling hook, which I really don't like. It's like the most popular one for sure. I just don't really care for it. I don't know if that belongs in Battlefield. There is like an automated turret, which is my favorite one so far. There is a healing gun that the medic class, they can heal themselves, they can heal other people, and I think they can also use it to revive people. And then the final one is the sniper. What's the sniper? Is it a drone? I think they have a drone. So, overall, I will admit my first day or two of the open beta, especially and for my tech test, I was worried. I was like, ugh, I don't know, man, this seems a little rough. But after playing it, I mean, I'd say I've played a good 8 to 10 hours of the open beta, and I'm really excited because this has been one map. It's definitely an old build. Hopefully there's stuff that's missing and not fixed that will be in the final, here in a few weeks when the game comes out. And it just it feels good to be in a modern day game again. I didn't love 1 or 5. The World War I and 2 thing, just I'm kind of done with that for now. But they it feels interesting. Now it's janky, like I said before. I'm really hoping that gets fixed up quite a bit. But I think my biggest surprise so far is how I've enjoyed the console experience a lot. I feel like Halo and Call of Duty as well have really mastered the like first person shooter console feel and making it feel good with a controller. I feel like the old Battlefield games, all of them, just have always just not felt quite right on the controller. Because I think I've played all of them on PC and console over the years, and I really think they've done some stuff right this time that makes us feel good. The new weapon attachment system is really cool. I really like it. At first I was like, oh, that's so gimmicky and lame, and now it's like amazing because I mostly run with like a red dot sight and like a silencer and a foregrip and a normal magazine. But you may run into situations where there's like a sniper popping off at you, and so if you have like the DMR, you can hide, equip a longer range scope, equip higher power ammo with fewer rounds, and you can like kind of adjust and change like your muzzle to from a silencer to a long range attachment, and then pop back out and hit that sniper. And if you kill him, then pop back in and do and switch more to like a mid range or a short range build. It's really cool. I like it. It's something I thought I was gonna hate, but now I like it, and now I can pretty much guarantee the next Call of Duty is 100% gonna steal that idea. 100% guaranteed. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm excited to see how the game plays and looks on a a fuller scale. I want to see what it looks like with all the maps and more guns and more. And I think because we see 4 specializations, I think there's 10. I don't know if those will be at launch or if there'll be like 6 at launch, and then they'll release 4 more on the battle pass because we know that it has one. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know if the orbital map that they have it was the right one for the open beta. It's really wide open, and I think there's a lot of players who, like Dr. Lupo described it. He's like, this feels like Warzone with no buildings. Now, part of that problem is that you've got people like him who aren't like Battlefield players who are playing it like Call of Duty, and that's probably not going to be very fun. You do need to get into the mindset of like your main job in Conquest is to capture points. Killing is secondary, at least in my opinion, from my pretty extensive Battlefield history. And once you do that, you start getting more kills because you're attacking or defending points, and and that's part of getting into the flow. So Battlefield 2042, I definitely went from being like, I don't know about this, to being pretty excited about it. So I think I'm pleasantly surprised with how good it feels, and I'm excited to play more of it. So the second bit here is talking about the Twitch leak. So I'm not. I've like vaguely kind of dabbled into this story. So if I get any details wrong, feel free to attack me in the comments. I will take that those tweet or YouTube interactions for sure. But it seems like the big thing that got leaked that was of interest to the community was I think around like the top 10,000 streamers pay, how much they made. I think it was last year, or it was like in like a 2-year period. I'm a little I couldn't really figure out exactly what they were saying there, but it was kind of a mix. I'm not really going to go into specific details about specific streamers and groups and stuff like that. Reluctantly, I will admit that I did look at some of that stuff, and I may have looked up some of the douchebags I've dealt with in the past to realize that they're making like half as much money as I make at my social work job. But hey, I'm sure they're getting the bag in a different way. So beyond that pettiness, I think this is interesting, and it's kind of what I alluded to in the little teaser at the beginning of the show. Is I'm wondering, one of the big things that I think this may impact is like how people make deals and contracts in the future. With exclusivity deals with Twitch, or if people leave Twitch and go to YouTube or Facebook, or if another big player comes about, and that like it's kind of weird. Like in one hand, there were actually people who were making less than I thought they were, but then I have to realize that if there's like a big streamer who makes, I mean, oh my gosh, they only made $2 million, right? That's so much money to be a streamer. That's wild. And they earn it in their own way for sure. But it also kind of makes me wonder, like, is it like a pro athlete where they may make more in endorsements and product deals than they even do from their main job? And so, because that kind of information didn't get leaked. That wasn't part of the leaks. And the other part of this story that's kind of interesting is that it sounds like the hacker who did it literally like took everything, like their source code and they don't know if they stole like passwords and stream keys or not, but they basically told everyone to update your passwords, enable two-factor authentication, or authorization, whatever one it is, and to update all that stuff. But there is some thought that they may have like they may have tons of information that they're still withholding, and they may do kind of a ransom thing. Supposedly the person did it, with the intent of getting Twitch to fix some things and to be better. That white hat hacker kind of thing, I think is what they call it, where it's like hackers for good. It's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to decide if how often that's really the motivation. Um, Sometimes it's for money, sometimes it's for trolling. In this situation, it's kind of hard to tell, but it was at least an interesting story. I feel bad for the people whose personal situations got exposed like that. Um, Even if you're someone who thinks that these people make too much money or that it's all kind of bullshit or whatever. I still think that there is like a big privacy issue there, that one, Twitch really effed up, because it seems, from some of the stuff I've read, is that this couldn't have happened unless someone internally probably tipped someone on how to get this done on a loophole, and that if that's the case, an organization as large as Twitch, who's associated with Amazon, should have had like some really beefy measures put in place to keep that from happening, and they obviously didn't. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I believe here, even in the days since the main leak was revealed, the person who did it has even revealed more information. I don't think anything's been like any like big like atomic bomb sized things, but it's definitely something of interest or of note, I guess. So now update those passwords, and if you stream, probably update your stream key. Even though I think they did that automatically for everyone. Luckily for like me, like I use Streamlabs OBS, so it automatically syncs the stream key. So yeah, so another rough moment for Twitch, which will be funny and a thing I talk about in the content updates. The third story here is Far Cry 6, released a day or two ago. The reaction has been really funny. So I did apply for a review code. I didn't get any response. To be fair, I applied like 3 days before the game came out. You're supposed to do it much earlier than that. So I'm not bitter about that. I intended on buying it. But then I decided to wait because I had a discount code for the Ubisoft store, but it only works on actually released games and not pre-orders. And then I watched a bunch of the reviews and decided to not buy it. I'll wait a couple months and buy it when it's like $30, to be totally honest. And what's interesting about that is the reviews have been really interesting. So I try to have a pretty eclectic group of people to watch reviews on with games, especially games I don't plan on playing. So I can try to like find like a common thread. And the common thread with Far Cry 6 is that it's a pretty good sign they really need to revamp the formula for Far Cry. That basically since Far Cry 3, it's been 3, 4, 5, and now 6 have been variations of the same formula, but not in a good way. That they probably need to revamp it in some capacity, but not that it's a bad game. It seems like I haven't seen anyone say, no, I hate this game, it's garbage. I've just not seen anyone say that like this is my game of the year, and that's a line that not every game has to meet, right? Not every game has to be game of the year. But I think the issue with Far Cry 6 is something along the lines of, it seems like the common thread is that if you've played 5, you don't really need to play 6 unless you are like really invested in just playing that experience again, with a different story. That Giancarlo Esposito isn't really that compelling, and he's not that prominent in the story, and that his performance is like fine. I've always felt like Giancarlo Esposito is an interesting guy who, like, his reputation is way bigger than his actual like talent, in my opinion. He's obviously a great, he's been very successful and he's a good actor, but like, his Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, um, is like fine. I mean, he's great. He's a cool character in that show, but I've always been kind of like, I've always felt like he's like a pretty overrated actor. And Ubisoft does this a lot. They brought in John Bernthal in Breakpoint, and he's like not a very good actor. Like, he's extremely very like B-list at best. And he just kind of plays the same character in everything he's in. And like, because I remember it was like around the same time that people had like the Cyberpunk 2077 with Neo. My God, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was like, so Ubisoft was like, well, we have a famous guy too, and then they had John Berthal walk out with his pit bull. Like, I think we might be Keanu Reeves. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I think we might be talking about two maybe somewhat different levels of talent here, but no, maybe not. But yeah, Far Cry 6. Something the tough part about it is that I intend to play it eventually. But the problem is that with how many, like with the games coming out in the next 6 to 12 months, I find it pretty hard to believe that 6 months from now, I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm going to go back and play Far Cry 6. I'm probably just going to be like, I'm just going to look up the ending and see what the story was. So we'll see. But if you're enjoying it, let me know. I'm really curious. Let me know on Twitter. Let me know on YouTube. I'd be really curious to see what other people think. I've really been seeing basically the same line for the most part in the narrative of it's fun and it's fine and it's more Far Cry. And it would be nice if they would switch it up maybe next time. But we'll have to wait and see. The next bit is Ghost Recon. So, for a big giant disclaimer, I am pretty well known for being a pretty harsh critic of Wildlands and especially Breakpoint. I was lucky, quote unquote, enough to play Breakpoint starting from like an alpha version to closed beta to open beta to release. And then just a few months ago when they did the immersion update or whatever, where they got rid of the stupid looter system. And so I genuinely I've given Breakpoint like 6 different chances to change my mind. And I just think it's not a very good game. I think it's kind of bad, actually. Like, there's a difference between games I just don't like and games I think aren't good. And it definitely sways into the not good category for me for objective reasons, for storytelling, for just, the mechanics of the game and general jankiness and just a lack of imagination and kind of a dead open world and bad AI, just bad, dumb, stupid AI. But that does start to delve into the subjective world. So take my opinion for what you will. On that note, they announced another expansion and DLC. I don't think we know too much about the actual DLC at this point. It looks like it does not take place in Aroa. It takes place, I think, in Russia is what they're implying from it. There was kind of a narrative of returning home, of some capacity. And I think it was supposed to imply, to Russia, to the motherland is I think what it references. They also, and so that's cool. I mean, I think Breakpoint is awful, but there's obviously at least enough people still playing it to support, for them to justify making this content, right? So for the people who like that game, I'm genuinely happy for them, honestly. I wish that they would invest their time in other games that maybe deserve their attention more, but that is a super biased opinion on my part, and I understand if no one cares what I think about that. But the other thing that happened is that they really teased this event up, this announcement, and they teased it up as being like, check in on this announcement for the future of Ghost Recon. And that really sucked because what that led a lot of people to believe is that they were going to announce like whatever was coming next for the Ghost Recon like franchise, the mainline franchise. And it, ended up not being the post Breakpoint game that was announced, which I think most people were expecting. It ended up being an announcement for Ghost Recon Frontline, which is not a BR. Just so everyone knows, it's not a BR. It's not a BR. Okay, it's not Fortnite. It's not. I that's a. Here's my thing: is that like Escape from Tarkov isn't technically a BR. Hunt Showdown isn't a BR. Some of these games, that are coming out aren't technically BRs, like aren't definition wise a BR, right? But they're still in that umbrella to me because we had PUBG, we had Fortnite, and then we had the Call of Duty Black Ops, and now Warzone, and we have so those and then Apex, and those are BRs. Those are large multiplayer battles that can only end with one team, and I think that's the broad definition of a BR or the narrow definition. Now, what I think where it gets a little hazy is I think that there's been games that have been developed since then that are kind of a BR inspired, but more of like a survival type game, like a insert, do a thing and extract idea where you may be the last person. Like you like Escape from Tarkov can be played as a BR. When you spawn into Escape from Tarkov, there's 13 human players on the map. And if you want to play it as a BR, you can go around and find all of them and kill them and take their stuff and then leave. And you win. You won the BR. Or you can not see anyone the entire map, do whatever you want to do, and then leave. And you can still win. So you don't have to kill everyone. But I still think that the general game is still like like in the tree of BR. It's in the family. It's a cousin. It's a kissing cousin, say, or a Kentucky cousin, as they say where I'm from. But there is okay, so it's not technically a BR. It's just, it kind of cracked me up because there were some people associated with the game and some content creators who were, I think, sucking up, and we're like, it's not a BR, and it's like, okay, it's not a BR, but that doesn't make it any less uninspired, in my opinion. Now, what's funny about Frontline is what it appears to be is I think they said 100 players, and it appears to be kind of like a Tarkov style game where you go in and you have a mission or some task you need to do. You do it. It sounds it's going to be PvE, PvP, which is what Tarkov is. And then you extract. So my guess is that you're going to be inserted either somewhere on the map or by helicopter or something, or you'll jump in. You'll have some kind of task you need to complete, or maybe multiple tasks, and maybe the more you do, the better. And then you have to extract in some capacity. So it's either going to be like a helicopter extract, maybe you have to like find like a spot in the map that like a tunnel or a car or something. I don't know. But it sounds like there's going to be other players, and I assume that you can PvP as well, right? So I'm conflicted. One, it seems like this isn't being made by Ubi Paris, who I kind of blame for the most part for Wildlands and Breakpoints straying from the herd, from the Ghost Recon perspective. This is being done by Ubi Bucharest, which we'll talk about because that's division related in some capacity. And the next little bit I'm going to do, ignoring that, like they showed some brief gameplay and some footage and stuff. And the interesting thing is it's not third person, it's first person. And that is kind of funny because that's actually a throwback to the OG Ghost Recon games in Rainbow Six, that were first person only. The first few Ghost Recon games were essentially mods of the OG Rainbow Six games, which were first person only, kind of. You could technically play in third person, but if you ever played it, it was not meant to be played like that. Like you could, but it wasn't like animations and stuff. Like they intended for you to play first person. So it is kind of funny that for Ghost Recon, it is kind of a throwback. But then they showed, then the stuff that we kind of expect. It's a free to play. Um, it's got like, it looks like some like base building mechanics of some capacity, which, okay, like that's fine, whatever. Um, I just, I don't know. So I've talked about this a bit on my stream and stuff like that. Um, it seems obvious, and I may or may not have some intuition that there was a directive by Ubisoft a few years ago for all their major studios and major IPs to make some type of spin-off or some kind of like AA game or free-to-play game. And what's resulted from that are games like Hyperscape, Phoenix, let's see what other ones that seem pretty obvious. X Defiant, Frontline, and I'm sure there's been a few more. And the issue is that it's something I saw on the Kind of Funny podcast where they talked about, I think it was Kind of Funny, where they didn't have an inspiration for a game and then make that game. They had a market they wanted to get into, and then they are trying to make a game to get into that market. And so and what's weird about it is that they aren't like taking one shot at it. They're taking a whole bunch of shots at it. So like in the BR or BR-ish genre, they've got Hyperscape, which as far as it seems has failed miserably. And they're throwing, Frontline now. And maybe Heartland. We don't really know enough about Heartland, and we know it's a free to play, so it seems like it's probably going to be in that. And so they're creating competition within their own company, not to mention the fact that you have to find a way to break into the big three of this general genre of PUBG, Fortnite, and Apex. And that's hard to do, hard to impossible at this point, especially if you're going to do it the Ubisoft style, where they're not going to go all in and fully dedicate a giant team into this stuff, maybe with Heartland, but that's, yet to be seen. And they're just going to kind of throw it out there, see what happens. And if it's not successful, ditch it, which is what seems like they've done with Hyperscape, right? Now, I've ranted plenty about how that seems like Ubisoft's general strategy for the last like 10 years of, spend a decent amount of resources and time to make a game, but then just gut it completely afterwards, to gut the development team and not let them fully support these live service games afterwards, or at least not all of them, aka The Division. Because we see them fully supporting some of their other live service titles, Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, Siege. Arguably, I would argue that Breakpoint has been much better served than the Division. And I can save that rant for later, but it's an interesting thing. And this Frontline thing just seems like another, they're going to put it out, and then it's gonna, they're gonna pay some streamers to play it for a week or two, and then it's just gonna disappear. And that sucks, man. Like that's a bummer. Like that's like such like artificial growth, because what they're gonna say is, oh, we had 100,000 players the first week, and it's gonna be like, yeah, but like, what about the third week when you have like 1,500? Because, and it's not because the game is bad necessarily, it's because there's no soul behind it. There's no, guts behind it. It's just, you put it out because you felt like you had to. I don't know. So I'll be curious to how that works out. And I do think it's reasonable to be disappointed that they announced this Frontline thing instead of announcing the next Ghost Recon game. Which I assume they'll probably do next year, because I assume the Breakpoint team, I have to imagine this DLC that's coming is the final one. And so they'll probably start working on the next experience. So if I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times. Give it back to Red Storm and give us Future Soldier 2. That's all I want. I digress. My final bit here is going to be talking about the division. It's actually kind of wrapping in some of the news from Ghost Recon, and it's kind of has to do with a question. Some questions I've received from people as well is, what does frontline mean to the division too? And so, or even Heartland to a point. So one thing to consider is that the studio they announced that's making Frontline as a standalone, its own thing, is Ubisoft Bucharest, who we also know is the studio who's supposed to be running support for the Division 2 content that's coming, which we've heard nothing about. So it seems pretty obvious that there's a handful of people at Massive who are still on the Division project. Pele, if you've paid attention to him, and there's a handful of other people who seem to still be in the Division kind of atmosphere. And then it seems like Ubisoft Bucharest has assigned a team, how big, we have no idea, to working on the Division 2 content. So it kind of seems like they're the hammer, and they're driving the nail, which is the content, and the people at Massive are kind of in charge of everything, right? So Yannick, Pele, and some other people. And I've seen some people kind of talking about like they're worried that Frontline means that there's not resources for the Division 2 content from Bucharest. It is worth considering that Bucharest is Ubisoft's second largest studio. It's mostly a support studio. And so I would assume that means that they're looking at 6, 7, 800 devs, staff. I'm assuming Ubi Paris is their biggest studio, followed by Bucharest. I don't know where Massive falls in that line, but I believe they have 3 or 4, maybe 500 people. So it's more than that, and it's less than the biggest one. So my guess is they have, and so, they very well may have 300 or 400 people on Frontline and could still have, 100 or 200 on this Division 2 content, which probably doesn't require like an entire development team. So yeah, but I think it's a thing worth at least thinking about, right? And then, there's kind of the Frontline is, they showed us footage, so I don't know if we would say they're still in pre-production. I have to imagine if there's that many assets and actual gameplay being shown, they must be in like actual development at this point. But I don't think they really detailed that very much. But the thing is, we still just have no word on the Division 2 content or Heartland at this point. We still have heard nothing. There's rumored to be a Heartland playtest at the end of this month, but I haven't seen anything. I've seen nothing of note or nothing credible, other than supposedly, which the website, I forget who even reported it last week, but I never saw any screenshots of emails. I never got an email, and I should, for multiple reasons. So I don't know. I will say there is some talk that this team they've put together for Division 2 content is struggling, is having some issues, because you have to consider, while there's people at the top who are Division experienced, if they're using Bucharest to actually make the content, these people haven't worked on the Division. I don't think Bucharest was a support studio for Division 2, so they're making they're trying to make content for an engine that they haven't worked on, or at least not for the Division. I don't know if they worked on like South Park or some of the other Snowdrop games, but I mean, I think it sounds like the late 2021 timeframe for Division 2 content is probably not going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and guess at this point it's probably going to be next year sometime, and that's. It's a bummer, because I talked about this during my stream the other night, and in chat, live chat. I'm streaming this on Twitch. Fluffy Corgi says that Bucharest was the main QA studio for the Division, so that's obviously a lot different than developing, trying to make modes and environments and stuff like that. But that still is valuable experience. So hopefully those people have something to do with it, even though QA, unfortunately, would probably move on to other projects. So we'll hopefully that is somewhat of a good sign. But it's just at this point, we're all kind of reaching. If you're a fan of the division, you're definitely just reaching for anything at this point. And at this point, we're basically just all speculation. There was the rumor about the playtest for Heartland, but I didn't see any proof of that. And we're kind of hitting that time now where some people are getting desperate enough that I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some fake NDA emails like we did with Warlords of New York, where some kind of sniveling creators will basically just make up their own news and then report it. And then when it shows to be fake, they'll just be like, oh, my bad. I didn't realize it wasn't real. So it wouldn't be the first time and it won't be the last. So I think the final thing I have to say about all of this is that we're going to hit a point, I think, where there's going to be the question of, was it worth spending all of these resources and all of this time and all of these really good developers' time on making more Division 2 content a year and a half, 2 years after Warlords? Is it going to be worth making this standalone free-to-play, maybe survival-ish kind of sequel all of this time later in a saturated market? Or would these very same developers, these very same people, would their efforts have been better to start, pre-production on a Division 3? Even if it's not a big enough team to like really dive into full development quite yet, or to do something like that, or or even like I talked about this during the stream. What if instead of Red Storm abandoning PvP for Division 2, Conflict and the DZ, to work on Heartland, which is, it seems pretty obvious that's what seems to have happened, because we know that they didn't work on Division 2 PvP for more than a couple months after the game came out. What if all of that effort would have just been spent on Conflict and the DZ and adding new modes and balancing and, adding like a last stand mode and doing stuff that it seems like people actually wanted from an existing product that could have been kept alive a little bit better by actually spending time on it rather than just kind of throwing it to the wolves and moving on to the next thing. I think at the end of the day is I'm curious to if this Division 2 content and Heartland will be good enough to justify essentially abandoning Division 2 when it got abandoned. And obviously Warlords came out and we had the seasons and stuff, but Warlords I thought was pretty good, but I don't think that there's anyone, shouting from the rooftop that the post-launch content for the Division 2 was like amazing. Episode 1, 2, and 3 were whatever, and, in a lot of ways, were obviously like unfulfilled ideas. And then Warlords was kind of cool, but then the seasons were just kind of whatever. Like, I mean, the global events and stuff are fine, but they just aren't like that punchy like content that people really want from a game like the Division, and that the potential it has. So I just don't. I don't know. It'll be curious in 3 or 4 years from now, or maybe when there's a Division 3 one day, to look back and be like, should they have stuck with the Division 2 and tried to really actually focus on that game? Or was it a good idea to do this other stuff? I don't know. I'm not a time traveler. I don't know. How we'll feel, but I'm sure I'll talk about it when that happens. Okay, I'm gonna jump into an ad. It is 60 seconds if you're listening to it on after on YouTube or on podcast services. So 60-second ad, and then we'll be back to wrap this thing up. This episode of the EchoCast is brought to you by Manscaped. Do you look like this guy? Or maybe like this guy? Well, you probably don't need to hear this. But when you look like me, you need to get all of the advantages you can get. One of the best ways to step up your sexy game and be comfortable in sweaty weather is to have nice, clean, tidy, well-maintained nuts. The best way to do that without nicking your nuts is to use the new Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. I love mine because it's well made, safe to use in all of your nooks and crannies, and with its handy charging dock and sleek design, it looks great in your bathroom to boot. Get 20% off and free shipping around the world with the code BAUN, BAUN, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping around the world at manscaped.com and use the code BAUN, BAUN. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Okay, so we had listener questions from, guess who? Master Prime, always the reliable. The first question from Master was, will Frontline and X Defiant affect Heartland? My argument for why I think Heartland may still do well, even with Frontline and X Defiant and these other games, is Frontline, X Defiant, Hyperscape. These games, like I was saying before, seemed like they were made to fit a niche, like to fit a genre, and they weren't like organically developed. It was like, well, we need to make a game like this. What can we shove into that space? Where Heartland seems like it was more organically developed. It seems like it's supposed to be like a survival sequel, which a lot of people want. People have been asking for a really long time. And so I'm hoping the fact that Heartland has potentially a like an organic audience, that it could do better, because X Defiant, I got to play that. I don't think I can talk about it yet. And Frontline, obviously we've only seen a little bit from it. They just seem so like soulless, and like they were just, like they hit a button on a machine that said video game idea, and then a slip came out and it said X Defiant Frontline on it, where it seems like hopefully Heartland is coming from a more genuine place. And Red Storm makes really good games. Like, I know that people in the Division community only really know them for really just doing like PvP in Division 1 and 2. But if you look at, the people who work at that studio have made really good games at that studio in the past. And this being a chance for them to make their own project that's controlled by them, I think Heartland will be really cool. My concern is that it could be a really good game that just makes no impact and outside of the Division community. And that's a bummer, because Red Storm deserves more than that. The Division deserves more than that. The second topic here from Master Prime is, do you want to appear on Diplomats of the Division? The people who do that stuff, they knew who they want on that show and not. If I'm invited, I'm sure I could try to work something out. I don't know. I'd be happy to collaborate with almost anyone. So sure. And then is Game Pass harming developers? That definitely has been a talking point quite a bit, but to this point, whether it's fully honest or fully transparent or not, I've not seen a single studio, even studios not owned by Microsoft, complain. And if anything, it's shown pretty heavily that when games are on Game Pass, they sell really well. So I don't know if it's people who like try it on Game Pass and then decide they want it to own it, or or it's just the exposure from Game Pass. Maybe people play on Game Pass and talk to their friends, and then those people buy it on Steam or PlayStation or wherever, or from the Microsoft store. So I don't think so. It seems like, if anything, it brings a lot more people to games, and they make the money work somehow. So studios keep signing up for it, and not just small ones. And I don't know, it seems like it's not hurting anybody as far as we can tell. As for some content updates, if you haven't paid attention, and I'm currently streaming on Twitch, and I'm back at Twitch. YouTube was cool. It had some cool features, but it's missing so many like quality of life stuff for streaming. And I just kind of got tired of it. I think that the Division, or I think Twitch is just a better viewing experience. It's more interactive. The tools and stuff I have, and the way my stream is set up, I think just works better with Twitch. Obviously the timing was pretty god awful with their giant leak and all of those issues, but at this point I still think it's the platform I just personally prefer. And I don't think YouTube has much motivation to try to copy a lot of Twitch stuff, because they're YouTube. They don't care. They paid their big bucks for their streamers, and looks like they're improving some things, but it's just there's just a lot of stuff here on Twitch that I prefer. So and then some Anchor ads. Anchor is putting out a bunch of new ways to monetize podcasts and such. That's who I use to host my podcast. Let me know, give me feedback. I'm trying some new stuff out. Like, I have this Manscaped sponsor, and I'm going to try to do some other ones. Making money off of this podcast is a way for me to dedicate more time to it and my stream and stuff like that, and making videos. If I'm just doing it for fun, then, it which I am, but it just, I can give less of my time to it. If I'm able to justify it financially, it's a lot easier for me to convince the wife that I can spend more time on this stuff, because it helps our family. And so, through Patreon, through ads, through streaming and things like that on Twitch, those things, the more support and the more revenue that can come from that, the easier it is for me to upgrade things. Right now, the next upgrade would be a new camera, and to pay for the internet that I pay for to be able to put out high quality stuff, and all of the equipment, all my PC upgrades and stream upgrades and stuff. But if it ever becomes obtrusive or annoying, or you guys don't like it, or there's something that you're against that pops up on it, I will hear you out, and if it's reasonable, I'm happy to get rid of stuff. So let me know. I'm open ears. And that's where we're gonna wrap things up here. So I do stream on Twitch, where you can follow, sub, and drop biddies and do all that fun stuff, and hang out and talk to me live when I'm streaming or recording a podcast. You can check me out on Twitter at Bondiesel or at the EchoCast if you only want like game related stuff and not my personal rantings. There is some cool EchoCast and Bondiesel merch over at streamlabs.com/Bondiesel. And that's all I have. So until next time.